Let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International Editor. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Good morning. It's pretty sinister, isn't it? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure that you and I will be in all sorts of trouble for some of the things that we think. And, it's just, as always, Keir Starmer's instincts are just so wrong on all of this. He senses that there could be, and there already is, a wave of civil unrest. Fortunately, vast majority of it peaceful over the
Uh,
migrant crisis. And instead of thinking to himself, well, how do we solve the source of the problem here, which is the migrant crisis? He thinks, how do we crush the people from making their voices heard? It's completely topsy-turvy.
it really is. The idea that somehow, the big problem is what people think is also ludicrous. It's typical of Keir Starmer, isn't it, to come up with something like this?
Completely typical. And, the response to this wave of, frankly, a frustrated outrage
Yeah.
for members of the public is just so typically feeble to try to characterize it all as racism or far right. It's just nothing of the sort in 99.9% of the case. And it's the laziest, most pathetic way to try to make this go away. And it's not going to go away. And in fact, it's only going to get worse
Mm.
because the reason for people taking to the streets is a very, very serious and well-founded concern
Mm.
about what is going on. This just can't continue, but somehow or other the government doesn't seem to understand that.
No, I mean, he spent all weekend, Keir Starmer, banging on about Gaza and how, he wants to save the planet from, this terrible conflict, and he wants to airlift children out of Palestine, and he wants to build yet another coalition of the bleeding willing to go in and sort of force a ceasefire on them. And everybody else in the country is going, actually, no, what we'd like you to do is solve this crisis on our shores from these people.
Completely. And, if the cabinet was being recalled to discuss and come up with very rapid solutions to the migrant crisis, I think the whole country would be cheering. We would feel that there was some hope of a change in what's going on.
Yeah.
But there's no sign of him taking it seriously. We've got Yvette Cooper muttering about bringing in new laws on people smuggling. We don't need any new laws. I mean, it's outlined quite clearly what is possible within the
Mm.
law, including under both French and British law, allows you to arrest and fine heavily people who are piloting passenger boats with more than a certain number of
Mm.
passengers that don't have the license to do that. Well, obviously, people smugglers or the migrants they use to take charge of boats across the channel already fall foul of that law in itself. And
Exactly.
that's
You
one of
can't
many.
make somebody sort of a double, you can't be a double criminal. You're already a criminal by doing it. And now you're going to say, oh, because there's more people on the boat, that's going to be an offence. It's already an offence.
It's just ridiculous. Come on. Don't you understand that the whole lot of it needs to be stopped? The issue isn't that there are too many people on the boats. The issue is that the boats are coming at all.
Mm. It is absolutely right. And, we've got the Police and Crime Commissioner of Essex asking for a meeting with Yvette Cooper today to actually get her to somehow commit to closing down the Bell Hotel in Epping. I was speaking to a friend of mine who went to the demonstration yesterday, a very well-to-do, fine, upstanding member of the community, not somebody from the far right. She went with her husband. She's got several children. She lives not far from Epping. To get confronted by 500 police officers, right, and about 500 or 600 far-left activists calling her scum. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the authorities in Essex are simply trying to shift the narrative, to change it to something else. Calling for the hotel to be closed. Well, great. But why were you getting involved in bussing people around and making matters worse? They are simply exposing their own
Yeah.
inadequacy. Ultimately, of course, it's not the police's fault that all this is happening, although the way that they're managing these things does seem to be provoking matters to be worse. But we are now facing a national crisis. And, I see various commentators going, oh, there's no crisis here, nothing to see here. There's actually less migrants in hotels. Well, where do those commentators think the migrants have gone? They've just been relocated into different settings, which are equally disturbing for people. And it's come to the point that the whole housing market in certain areas is being distorted by this industry. You know, because the councils are paying over the odds and contractors are paying over the odds to turn properties into HMOs for refugees and asylum seekers. That is in turn reducing the property supply for non-refugees, British citizens, if you like, which is in turn hiking up the rents. So Angela Rayner and her colleagues can go on all they like about rent controls and new rights for renters over landlords. None of it's any good if such a big proportion of available housing stock is being taken up for this crisis, which is completely unnecessary.
Exactly right. And now they're talking about commandeering other properties that are currently not being used, like disused tower blocks, apparently old teacher training colleges that aren't in use anymore, and various other kind of student accommodations which they're going to take over and spend yet more millions on renovating them and putting more asylum seekers and illegal migrants in, once again bypassing everybody who's on the council housing waiting list.
I mean, this is real stuff. It's not you and I just sitting here, you know, making it up that there are people being pushed down the waiting list or deprioritized. You know, I get, and I'm sure you, you know, in your role might get emails about this all the time. You know, emails from families who say, you know, look, I don't want to be unkind or unfair on people from other parts of the world, but look, you know, I really need housing. I've got a disabled child or whatever it may be. This is very, very real. I think the country's going to explode if it goes on much longer.
It really is. I mean, it feels like it's at that tipping point, and that's why I don't think this is going to go away, and I don't think Keir Starmer pretending that it's not there is going to make it go away either. Isabel, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Isabel Oakeshott, Talks international editor.